And video. Hi, it's Tiffany and Lorraine Galloway with another episode of the Resilient Mother podcast. This month, we're talking about elevating yourself, and resilient standards to do it. The people we put ourselves around to the goals that we make for ourselves as moms and for our families. And today, my guest is Maria, who's joining me to add to this conversation. Maria, thank you so much for being here. Please tell us more about you.
Thank you so much, Tiffany, for having me. I am a corporate attorney by training, but I'm also a parenting coach and an author. So it's funny because I recently gave a presentation down in Miami on negotiation skills. And I told the audience these skills I'm going to teach you about negotiating in a professional corporate setting are almost like pretty much directly transferable to parenting. So you could use them as your parenting too. So I feel like, well, there may not be a lot of overlap between those things. There actually are. So I work mostly with parents who are like me, healing and reparenting themselves from after their own childhood abuse while simultaneously learning to parent their kids. We did not have good role models for parenting and relationships. We were kids. So we're learning a lot, not just about childhood development when we ourselves become parents, but we're learning a lot about ourselves and how to relate, how to have better communication, better relationships. It's very energy intensive. It can be very lonely and isolating, especially if, like me, we're estranged from our own parents. So we don't have that village and that support network. So that's what I help a lot of parents with, to give them that support network to, help them understand they're not alone. That's unfortunately, there are a lot of adults in that situation that don't have that support network and are working on healing them, themselves. Some of them are recovering from addiction and things like that. But they're almost all have in common this idea of they want to be better parents to their kids, and that they know that they don't have all the answers, and that they are always learning to, improve and have better, stronger relationships with their kids, so that their kids know that they can come to them, communicate with them about anything, and they know that their parents have their back, will support them, and love them unconditionally.
I definitely think that's part of being resilient, is being able to identify those areas that you want to elevate yourself and hold yourself to a higher standard, and then protect those standards resiliently that you want to have for yourself and for your family. So recognizing that there is a pattern that needs to be broken, being a chain breaker and stepping up to it in your family, it takes a lot of courage. It takes resilience because it's a process. And it sometimes feels like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, and you'll catch yourself and you're like, I wasn't going to do that like my parent. And then it slips out. And then you have to catch yourself and give yourself grace and go, okay, refix the pattern. Let's go back. Let's change it. Let's apologize, whatever we need to do to at least mix it up, change the trigger, change the pattern, and move forward. And it's not something that everyone's going to choose initially, but once I think you have kids and once you see patterns that don't serve you, you certainly don't want to pass them on. You definitely want to have a different standard to give them to live, and to have the resilience to create their own standards and to elevate themselves in their life and what they want to do and the standards they want to hold for themselves. Because hopefully the next generation is better than us, and the next and the next, and it becomes a legacy and a lineage that we have contributed to and sent them in the right direction. So I love what you do. I would want to know, though, I always ask this, I have to know, what does resilience mean to you?
Oh, so resilience, many things. I definitely associate resilience with that kind of being open-minded and always being open to improvement, always seeking our own, working on our own personal development, and understanding that, we're not perfect and that we're always, improving. There's always something we can do better. I also associate resilience with grit, that, that not only being able to make shorter term sacrifices for longer term goals, but also, not giving up in the face of adversity, not letting setbacks completely derail us, right? We can certainly take some time to understand the setback and study it and figure out where we went wrong, what happened, and pivot in those things, but then we don't let the setback kind of completely derail us and and we don't let it, lead to us giving things up or giving up our dreams or giving up the idea of a good relationship with our kids. So definitely, I think of those things when I think of resilience. I also think of not letting perfectionism keep us from achievement, because I find that a lot of people procrastinate because they're perfectionists and they think, well, if I don't get it right perfect the first time, or if I cannot get this perfect, I just won't do it at all, right? And they don't want to put something out there that's not 100% perfect, or create something that's not 100% perfect. But that's a process that rarely happens. Like, I'm an author too. I'm not going to write a book from beginning to end that's perfect. That doesn't need any editing. It's just not going to happen. Nobody can do that. So
Right.
it's like, be willing to do some things imperfectly. I am the first to admit I am far from a perfect parent. In fact, I recently had a great Mother's Day with my kid. He's 14, so he's a teenager. So that brings its own challenges, but he wrote me a wonderful card with a wonderful drawing. He got me flowers. This is all his doing. I told him, I know I'm not perfect. And he said, Mom, you are as close to perfect as a mom could get. And that was just wonderful. Now, I'm going through a second divorce. I am not perfect. My house is not perfect. Okay. I am not a perfect person by any means. And my son's been through a lot. But I want to send the message to parents that you don't need to do everything perfectly, right? And project perfection to have this really great relationship with your kid.
Yeah.
Because kids are not traumatized, as Gabor Mate says, they're not traumatized because they are hurt. They are traumatized when they are alone with the hurt. So children can go through these adverse experiences, but if they have at least one person, hopefully one parent, right, who is there for them, who is emotionally available, who can provide that, comfort and validation to them and that love, and can champion for them, they can get through a lot. They have a capacity to get through a lot. So that's the message I want to send. That I hear from parents all the time. Well, I think I messed my kid up, or I did this, or we're divorced. And none of that means that you cannot have this rock solid relationship with your child. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I love that, because I think a different way, instead of looking at perfection, and we can see a lot of what we think are versions of that out in the world today, everywhere, of what the perfect mom should be doing and what the perfect mom should be wearing and what size the perfect mom should be and what their kid should be doing and achieving. If you get caught up in that, you're just setting yourself up, because every family is unique. Every child is unique, and your love and your child are different. And it's good that it's different. So instead of thinking about perfection, there's nothing wrong with thinking about elevating. There's nothing wrong with thinking about, hey, I'm going to do a little bit better tomorrow. I didn't quite get that right today. I'm just going to do better tomorrow. I'm going to hold myself to a higher standard tomorrow. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's something we can set our kids up with too, is, you're not going to get it right the first time. And I can't always take the consequences away from you from your choices, or you're not going to learn resilience. But that doesn't mean you can't choose something beyond you right now. It's good that you want to challenge yourself. It's good that you want to be a better parent. But to be a perfect parent, there's only one, and he's watching us all, and none of us have figured out how he's doing that, right? So until somebody figures that out, all we can do is be like him, and he honors our agency. He sets the example. But the one thing that's universal is love. We can always have love. And I think as long as what we're doing elevates somebody with love, it's empowering, it's uplifting. Those are the kind of standards that we want to hold for ourselves and for our kids. And that's going to look different for everyone. And that's okay. And you may not have it figured out yet. That's okay. The fact that you even care shows that you're probably in the higher percentage of the better parents that are out there. Because a parent that is not a good parent is not going to care.
Right.
Exactly. Right. And so it's great that you care. And I think something else you kind of hit on is like what's age appropriate is also important. And I think you do have to have a little bit of an understanding of child development to be able to step back and go, I'm the adult. They're the kid. This is what they comprehend right now. I can't hold them to a standard of an adult. That's not fair. And I can't hold myself into a standard of someone who's already had a teenager before if I haven't had a teenager before. That's absurd.
Yeah.
And so I like to make sure I have mentors or people that are beyond where I'm at, who have raised teenagers, who have done some things so that they can give me some insights on what my options are to try and to do. But then there's always the factor of the world's different today than it was when they were raised. And so I think that's the trick, is taking the advice and then figuring out, okay, but this child, our situation. But I love and find so much comfort in what you shared of that, as long as one parent shows up, one parent is the staple force, that child will still do well. It is obviously ideal to have two parents together, but how many homes are that way today?
Right.
Few and far between, sadly. There's a lot of mixed families, different families, divorced families, single mama here. And I have a son whose father's not part of his life, and that's his choice. And it's sad, but what I find is that it just enforces me to have compassion for my son and to show up. I mean, if somebody's got to show up, I'm going to show up. I'm going to show up.
Right.
And I have that motivation to hold myself to that standard of remembering that someone's counting on me. Somebody's counting on me to show up for them. And how do I want to do that? And what does that look like? And what is best for them?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's as long as they have one parent to that will do that, I think. And kids can have a lot of adults in their lives who, they can have a strong relationship with and who can help them, right? They can have a lot of adults who can guide them. Our kids, like their aunts and uncles, they have a different relationship with their aunts and uncles than they do with their parents. They have a different relationship with their favorite teacher than they do with their parents. And that can be very helpful because, as you'll find out as your kids get older, teenagers, their brains are wired to be oppositional to the parents. It's called the counter will, right? Their brains, because they're individuating, and that is a kind of preservation mechanism. That is a normal part of teen development. Yes, it is frustrating, but when they have other adults in their lives other than the parents that they trust, they sometimes are more likely to take guidance from those other adults because they're not the parents. So it's good that they have that village. Ideally, like you said, that's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think it's important to hold a standard to who's around your kids. I think that's really, really, really important. Yeah. And I know it's something I have fiercely protected. Who are my kids with? Do I know them? Are they safe? Do they hold the same standards that I do? And not in like a snarky way of I hold these standards, but are my kids going to be honored for who they are? Do I have to worry about them or what they're going to learn or what they're going to be around? And also, is it someone I definitely want them around because it's going to elevate them? It's going to show them, oh, here's a traditional family that's working. That's what it actually looks like. Here's a male figure we don't have in our phone that I want you to know is a good male figure and that can show you what that would be like, kind of thing. Right. And to be open to the fact that I know I don't have total influence over my kids, I think is a really important thing to realize. And definitely just surviving age 13 with one of my kids. So true. And it's been interesting towards the end of this year to really realize who was really there for my child and what teachers were really there and who were really supporting and took the time to understand what struggles she had over the last year. And then I know those are the people I can count on because without me even asking them to, they stepped up and they saw a child that needed some guidance, that needed some love, and they stepped in and raised to that. So, hooray for our teachers who elevate our kids and help them, that they touch a lot of lives. But even our church groups, our other family members that step up, or our adopted family or community that you've made your own, that you have that control while your children are in your home. And it really should be something that you consider. And
absolutely,
I've been blessed to be with my kids a lot. I know that's harder when they're like in after school care and they're in childcare and all of those things. And depending on what your budget is and what's going on. But I think the thing you can always hold to is you're still that base. You're still that come home, the home base of love and support for your child. No matter how many other people influence your child, you're still mom. Absolutely. No one's going to take mom. And they may go away for a while, but they'll come back to mom eventually.
They do. And sometimes like you said, parents have such a great influence on kids, even if it's not immediately apparent. And kids, they still, even adolescents and teens, they want parental approval and want to please the parent, and they want a close relationship with the parent, even if it doesn't appear that way. They still want, I tell parents, still make the effort spend time with them, plan, family activities are important. Activities with friends are important too at that age, but family activities still important. Time with siblings still important, but they want the time with you, but it's almost like they know they're going older, so they have a harder time articulating, hey, I would, I feel like I haven't spent a lot of time with you recently, mom and dad. I'd like to spend more time with you. It's harder for a teen to say that, but it's true. And, so you can't discount, I would certainly not discount the influence of the parents, even for the adolescent and teen years, but it's not as a parent, right? They're not going to say, it's like little kids will not come to you and say, I feel very disconnected from you recently. They'll ask you, hey, will you watch a TV show with me? Will you play with me? Yeah. Will you read with me? And teens will say, hey, you want to go to a movie? And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. And I'm thinking, oh, maybe he needs time with mom. That's why he's asking. And I'll make the effort to. If your teen is asking you to spend time with them, they need your presence for some reason. So you need to make the time to spend with them, because that's their way of asking, hey, I just need you for some reason, right? And I tell parents too, make sure you get a lot of, it's harder with multiple kids. I only have one, so it's easier in that respect, but make sure you get a lot of pressure-free one-on-one time, where it's unstructured time, where you're just hanging out together, because it's like, I tell people, in the silence is where the magic happens. When you create that space for them to come forward and make the bid for connection, and then you respond, that's really important, because we're all rushing from activity to activity, but you need to make the time for that, unstructured time with them.
And be present in that moment as well. Because it's easy as moms for us to be everywhere. And so interesting, I'm thinking as you're talking about this, something that kind of happened over the last year is my younger daughter and my older one that's home mentioned something to me. And I was like, I'm really trying to connect with your sister, but it's really hard. And she said, well, mom, when she shows you that she's playing a new song, because she taught herself piano and stuff, she really wants you to stay and listen to the whole song, or she thinks that you don't approve, or that you're not paying attention, or it's not important. And I had no idea, because I'm kind of busy. So I'd come and I'd be like, wow, that's really cool. Sometimes I would listen to the whole song, but I didn't realize it was important. That was every time. And she wasn't communicating that. So her sister did for her. And I love how they like watch out for each other and communicate for each other. Awesome. But it started making me think, okay, what else is she's doing that she's trying to get my attention, but she's not communicating it. It just was this helpful thing of like, I thought that was more of a like younger kid thing, but it was what she was working through at the time. And so then I started paying attention a little bit more to, oh, that's really cool, that drawing that you're doing, or that's really cool, this thing that you're doing. Like, I just didn't realize she needed that feedback from me, because when she hit teenage years, there was like whole communication, like, I'm not talking to you, mom's not cool anymore, I'm in my room, stay out of my room. Like, I was like,
yes,
what is going on?
It's almost like a switch is flipped. Yeah. And how the parent responds is really important, because we went through that transition phase too. And I was like, wow, relationship is completely different than how it was. Yeah. But I thought the goal of the teen years is really to get through them with the relationship intact. So that's what you want to focus on, right? Like you mentioned, more than anything. Because kids, when they're teens, they're feeling a lot of pressure from school and parents, and you're not telling them anything they haven't heard yet from teachers and other people, as far as like, you need to get good grades, you need to do this, you need to be responsible. They've heard it, so I think it's more beneficial for parents to preserve the relationship. And like you mentioned, as far as when other people have access to your kids, be an involved parent. That's a lot of what I coach parents on: how to be involved without being a helicopter parent, without over-parenting, right? You don't want to over-parent either, because we're preparing our kids to be independent adults and capable, and have, better self-esteem, that they can do things. But you want to be involved, right? You want to know generally who they're hanging out with, know about their teachers, volunteer at school, go to school events. If you can't do every one, it's tough. I know, with multiple kids and working full time, but at least the ones you can do, right? So, and my kid, it's amazing. Like, he still likes me. He still likes it when I go to some school events. Which is kind of cool, because he's a teenager. So not sure how long that will last. But but all that's important. It's important to be involved, right? But without overparenting. And that's hard to get right sometimes. It's hard to kind of ride that, but it's okay. Sometimes if you overstep and you overparent, you always back off. And when your kid pushes back and says like, "Hey, I got this. I can handle my own workload." You're right. I'm sorry. Just I'm here if you need any help. I'm here if you need any help with organizing, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
I'm here if you need help or you have questions. And you're right, and I'll back off. And that, like we were saying earlier, you're not going to be perfect all the time, but
Mhm.
an authentic apology does wonders for the relationship, because
Oh
relationships
yeah.
about repair, right? There's rupture and repair. I tell my son, look, it is impossible for two people to live in the same household and not get irritated with each other from time
Yeah.
to time. It's just
Yeah.
not, it's impossible, right? So that's
Yeah.
going to happen. So, but the repair is right with what's important. Yeah.
So since we're talking about mothers, I am curious. So when did you decide to elevate your standards and be different than your mother?
Oh my gosh. So it's interesting because I could almost pinpoint. It was a long process, but there was kind of a watershed moment when my son was like 5, and this is right around the time when his father and I were splitting up. And I was extremely emotionally dysregulated as a younger
Mhm.
mom. I, would yell, raise my voice. I just was very easily triggered by normal childhood behavior.
Hmm.
And I remember yelling at him, and he yelled back at me like with tears in his eyes, just completely distressed because I was yelling at him. And I remember at the moment, for whatever reason, I was detached enough to kind of detach myself from being triggered and think, oh my gosh, I am not handling this right. I am just not. He's upset. He's 5. And I remember thinking, I'm the adult. Like, I can't, I'm like you said earlier, I'm projecting onto him this kind of almost adult level responsibility. This is my responsibility.
Mhm.
The responsibility for the relationship is with me. I
Yeah.
have to work on myself. This is not about him changing him, fixing his behaviors. This is about me working on my
Yeah.
stuff. And that really began that whole journey. And the first thing I decided, I said, I have to find out how to regulate so I don't lose my stuff every time. I have to.
Yeah.
And that was the first step. And it took like almost a year before I could and I noticed that after about a year, his tantrums got way better, and he was eventually able to articulate, hey, I'm upset because X, instead of having a tantrum. And that was
Yeah.
because he could co-regulate better with me because I was regulating myself. So yeah, that started that whole, it was a very long process. It's never over really, but that was kind of the beginning of it, was this need to regulate first before I work on the other stuff. And then I read about, childhood development, educated myself in that. And then I thought, about my own childhood, and I carry my childhood with me like very consciously. Like I remember when I was a kid, this happened and it was really bad for me and really negative for me. And here's what I needed. So I remember not to put my kid in those similar situations because of what happened, yeah, in my childhood.
It's almost like you know how to be the parent you wish you'd had at that time.
Right.
And that's often what I'll end up stopping and asking myself, who did I need when I was
Right.
going through that? And
Exactly.
that's been a saving grace sometimes when it might be a situation most parents don't want to be in, or something that caught me really off guard. And then it's like, oh, wait, did I go through that? And how did that go well or not go well? And what do I want to do? But I think we're always in control. We're always in control of ourselves and
Right.
the present moment. And parenting is that, to be present with our child in those moments and continue to build the relationship. So you went through that on your own for yourself, but then you decided to go help other parents. So
Right.
when did you decide to become a parenting coach? What was that transition?
Right. So, just a couple years ago, and I had written a couple parenting books, and then I published regular content on YouTube. And I actually had audience members ask me, "Do you do classes and coaching?" And I thought, "Oh yeah, that would be a great idea." So yeah, that started. That's how that started.
And what are some of your favorite techniques that you use with your clients?
Um, so what I like to use to help them regulate is, if you're in having a moment where you just tensions are high and emotions are high, and you're about to yell, or maybe you have yelled, or you're getting really bent out of shape, ask yourself, if this were the last time my kid ever saw me, would I be okay leaving it like this, like with this
Oh, wow.
moment, with this situation, right? I've
Mm.
used that myself several times, and that really like helped me to calm down immediately because, and like you said, I can't control my kid's behavior. There have been times I dropped off at school and he was mad at me. I can't control that, but I can
Yeah.
control my behavior, just like you said. So if we can, when we separate, whether I drop him at his dad's or drop him at school, I'm not going to see him for a while. If I can be okay with my behavior and my, how I interacted with him, that's okay. I cannot control his behavior if he's upset with me or whatever. So, but that really helps a lot of parents because you focus on what's really important. Like, my father, just to put it in perspective, when I was like 11, he got involved in a car accident and passed away. Like, yeah, I mean, one day he was there, one day he wasn't. So, I think about that and I think that there's, these things happen. They happened in my family.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like to think about them. Other parents don't like to think about them, but it puts things in perspective and helps you focus on what's really important. Do you want to be remembered as, nagging about getting out the door on time, nagging about grades? I always think if we're running late for school and I'm very frustrated, I just think, you know what? If we're late, we're late. It's not the end of the world. Whatever. Like it's like that. So that's a big technique that I think helps a lot of parents. Just
I do think perspective is really important, and it may be a different question for you. I think that one really hits, and I think that's why it works for so many. But I know another one that I focus on is I want my kids to want to spend time with me when they're adults. Like I want to make sure this relationship continues. So am I allowing the relationship to develop and continue where they get to be treated like an adult as they emerge into an adult? Am I respecting that? Or am I trying to keep them little? Because we would like to, but we can't.
Yeah.
They don't get to stay little. And then the other one for me is I'm a birth parent too. So I have an older child that I have kind of a relationship with, but it was an open adoption that really became a closed one. So it wasn't what I was thinking it was going to be. So I'm always kind of working on that. But I gave her my child up when they were 9 months old. So I had a period of time with them and then I didn't. And so when I had my next child, everyone's like, oh, it's going to heal it. It's going to be fine. But no, it became, here's what I missed. Here's what I missed. So I really got to make this count with the time that I have. And it just makes it precious too, because I don't know, we've had some people on here who have lost a child too. And there's that perspective of it too. Like this life is such a gift that we get to have. These children in our lives are gifts. And we need to hold ourselves to a standard of making every moment count.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. When you think about, like you said, your oldest is 13, right? How many summers do you have left with them until they go to college? Not that many.
No.
And the summers go by really quickly.
Yeah, they do.
So that's a good way of thinking about it too, is that the time goes by so fast and and how do we want to spend it, right? Because I mean our kids will still need us even when they're 18, 20, right? Kids, you don't stop being a parent, but you're not going to have as much time with them as when they were living at home with you. You're just not going to. So like you said, take advantage of that. And I'll, I think about that and I get emotional thinking about my kid not being at home, but that's just part of the journey. But again, they're not going to stop needing guidance from you. So I remember when I went to college, I was still like wanting to call home and stuff. So so those are all, that's a great way of thinking about it for sure. Yeah.
Do you have a story of one of your clients who was really resilient in the way that they decided to level up their parenting and the standards that they held for themselves?
Let's see. I'm trying to think of specific. I have a lot of kind of general stories about just, without getting into it, of adults having suffered just really bad abuse, or being very sensitive children and exposed to things they should not have been exposed to, right? And it made them want to, like, I could think of one lady who made her just so withdrawn, like emotionally withdrawn and not wanting to be vulnerable. And that, inhibits connection, obviously. So when she became a
Yeah.
parent, part of that was like being open enough to connect with her children and feeling safe to do
Mhm.
that, because for so long you've repressed your emotions, because she was particularly sensitive and there was a bunch of stuff she went through that, was just
Well, and that was how
not
you
good for a kid.
survived. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, but just this process of being open enough to connect with her kid and realizing that her kid needed her, the emotional presence and the emotional availability. So yeah, that's something I remember. Yeah, because of
So
the
instead of
yeah,
surviving parenting, how to thrive in parenting.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And there's a huge difference. And it feels so good when you do get it right. And you have these moments that are like,
right.
oh, they were listening, or wow, look at where we're at from a year ago. This feels so much better. I
Oh yeah.
think that makes it all worth it. And those times that are like, and I want to thank my mom, or they just do something at church or make a choice, and you're like, yes, it
Yeah.
makes it all worth it. And so that's really the perspective too of like, it may not feel so great right now, and you might be like, I don't know if this is working. I don't know what I'm doing. This child did not come with a manual, and it's not like that child. And then they change on me, and like it can just be like, oh, and
It's a
they're
lot.
people. They're people. I'm in charge of people.
I know. It's like, who gave me this responsibility? And like you said, no manual. And every kid's different. So, and kids are largely born with a temperament too, apart from what you're teaching them and what they learn, right, at home and at school and in the world. So, yeah. So, like you said, kids are different, and some kids may be very vocal, and some kids may be very like withdrawn and reserved, and you need to do a little digging. Some children, you have to do a lot of digging to get to like what's going on with them. Now, what happened with my son, he would get really upset. I'm like, what are you get upset about, like one small thing? And I said, why are you upset about this? And then all of a sudden the floodgates would open, and he'd be like, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. I'm like, okay, this is what's going on. Like, this is just the straw that broke the camel's back, and you really have been carrying a lot of stuff you haven't communicated yet. And now all of a sudden, now you're communicating all this stuff. I'm like, okay, you just kind of listen, right? And it's hard for moms, a lot of the moms I work with, not to take things personally. Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah, that's
also
important.
to deal with that, it's hard for them not to be triggered. And I remind them, look, often the mom is like the emotional dumping ground, because the kids feel safe expressing everything to the mom.
Yeah,
So we also have to take care of ourselves, because that, we identify so strongly with our kids much of the time, and we empathize with them, that we can get, identify too much with our emotions sometimes. And that can be very draining, energy draining for us. So it is essential that we take care of ourselves.
absolutely, 100%. You got to put
Yeah.
your oxygen mask on first, or
Yes,
you can't put
absolutely.
oxygen masks on anybody else. Your cup has to be overflowing, so you have something to give. And
Right.
so taking care of yourself has to be a standard. I especially learned that as a single parent, that when I became a single parent of 3, I was really outnumbered. And then it
Yeah.
was really like,
Yeah.
okay, I got to maintain myself, my energy, my everything, and take care of 3 humans and keep them alive and well
Right.
fed and a
Right.
roof over head and like all those things.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so it's important. It's really important.
It's
Even if like 5 minutes a day, you give yourself 5 minutes of joy, or 5 minutes in the closet, in the bathroom with the door locked, like whatever you need to do for your sanity along
Mom,
the
where
way.
are
Because
you?
sometimes we're very sleep deprived. We're
Yeah.
just doing the best we can. And then asking for help and
Yeah.
creating that community, making sure you
Yeah.
have that a community that helps you hold the standards that you hold for yourself, and that they elevate
Yes.
you and that they support you. You get to build that team. And it's so important that you do that. Is there anything that
Yes.
you can do? I'm curious what you do with your son when it comes to honoring who your child is, but also holding them to maybe a standard that's higher than the world standard of things, or letting them understand that they can level up in their life, they can elevate themselves, they can challenge themselves, and that's good,
Mhm.
that they have goals to work towards. So I think that's part of resilience, is not just surviving, it's that thriving piece.
Mhm.
And we want to give that to our kids, but we also want to honor who they are and not hold them to too high of a standard because of age development, but also not hold them to a standard that doesn't fit who they are.
That's tough. So that's kind of the key right there, right? How to, like, guide them into having their own fulfilling life, right?
Mhm.
So, but as you said, honoring their authentic selves too. So, one of the things I like to recommend is to introduce your kids to as many activities, things as possible, and then
Mhm.
kind of talk to them about what may have resonated with them, what they would like to do, what they didn't like, things like this, so they can start to get an idea of activities they would like to, they would find fulfilling, for example.
Yeah.
It's tough to get this right sometimes because with older kids you start to talk about, well, what kind of jobs would you like to do, what kind of college would you like to go to, but you don't want to communicate that to them in a way that's going to put a lot of pressure and stress on them about
Yeah.
achieving,
Yeah.
right? So it's not about achievement so much as figuring out what you'd like to do to have a fulfilling life. So
Yes.
see kind of what they gravitate toward, and then
Mm.
find them maybe activities to do or enroll them in some classes. One thing I like to tell my son is, like, I'll tell him, we're going to do this class because you liked such and such activity. um I want you to do like 3 classes, and if you really hate it, you don't have to keep doing it, right? That takes a little bit of the pressure off. Like, you don't have to do a year's worth of classes, but I want you to at least go to 3 and try it. But if you really hate
Yeah.
it, you don't have to continue it. Or sports or something similar. So that kind of gives them the opportunity to figure out, learn something new, learn a new skill, but with less pressure. Because if they feel pressured, or like you're forcing them to do something,
Yeah.
they're not gonna like it as much. Like, my son loves to draw, but I don't pressure him too much into, like, I will tell him, like, well, you have to draw, you have to do this, or you have to take a course. He'll draw on his own, so
Yeah.
I'll just let him draw on his own. Or
Yeah.
certainly, like, if your kids are readers like mine is, let them select the books they like to read, as opposed to
Mhm.
you forcing them read these books and not these books. Or some parents, like, don't like graphic novels. Obviously, they should be age appropriate. Well, graphic novels they're artistic works, and they're also reading. So I mean, that's what the kid likes to read, that's what they should read, right? So those are some good ways of introducing them to activities, but not forcing them to do stuff. Also,
Yeah.
like, anything their peers are doing an activity, they'll like to join the peers a lot of the times to have
Mhm.
do time with their friends, sports, things like that. So those are also really good ways of, like, getting the kids involved in something, having them learn new skills, having them try new things if the friends are doing it. So, like, we love to travel, and I think that's extremely educational. So I'll involve my son in, like, planning trips, like, where would you like to go? Would you like to go more to, like, a beach place, or a different type of place? Or, like, do you want to go to a city and walk around a new city? What I'll have him involve him in, like, planning activities and things like that. So then they're more involved. So they have more of a stake in the activity because they've had some input. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a key thing right there, that a mother creates an environment of learning or opportunity when they see a child is interested in something. And I think we think, oh, teen years. No, this can start as early as when they're 2,
Mhm.
3 years old and they're repeating something over and over again. Maybe all of a sudden they've become obsessed with numbers. Give them things about numbers or letters or colors or whatever it is. But if you pay attention as a mom, one, you're going to have your gut instinct that you can trust, but also you can just create an environment for them to learn. I really like Montessori style of learning, where you
Yeah.
kind of create centers and
Right.
then they can kind of fiddle with whatever one they're interested in, and they get to promote their own learning while they're really interested in it. And then they can take that ability to learn and to problem solve through the rest of their life. And I love all the suggestions that you said as well. I think that's important, to just give opportunities without the pressure so they can try it, so they can get a taste, because only they know what lights them up and what fills them with joy. We certainly can't put, you're going to fulfill my dreams for me, this is what you must
Right.
do. Even
Right.
if they're really good at it and you're
Yeah.
like, but you can do this, you can be
Yeah.
so awesome at this. Like, no, that not work.
Right.
And so, like, my daughter with the piano, teaching herself, that was just a simple ask for my keyboard in her room. It went in her room. I tried not to be too excited and I walked away. And then I started hearing stuff and I'm like, oh, this is cool. I'm gonna
That's
stay out of
awesome.
it. And then she performed this year. Like, and then my other daughter started drawing at a very young age. But I just remember when crayons were first introduced, pens were first introduced. I didn't want to create any draw within the lines or any rules for
Right.
her. I just gave the utensils and I walked away. And now she's
Mhm.
my very artistic child. And I could have gone in and been like, no, you must color in the lines. And no, you must use
Right.
this color and all those
Right.
things. that she would have lost her creativity. And now this is my kid who like takes garbage. Like we go somewhere and she wants the cups and the lids and the straws and all the napkins and whatever, wants to go home and make something out of them. And she can make amazing stuff out of them, but I don't like a lot of garbage in my house. But, but I didn't put rules that restricted the learning. I put boundaries around,
right.
We can do that. Sometimes we can bring cups home. Sometimes you can make some stuff, but like not every time, like kind of thing. Or here's the piano, here's the space to practice. I'm going to go over here and let you do your thing. And even with my son, he's really into numbers right now and Number Blocks, the movie and stuff like that. So I want to get those for him while he's really into it. And so that he's really into counting and the numbers, so that what he's interested in right now, one, I'm enforcing that I care as a parent about what they're learning, what they're interested in, but I'm also giving that opportunity for it to thrive. Well, they have the choice in it. And I think that teaches them too. They have the choice of what they get to focus on and what they learn, and that I'll support them. And I think that creates a great environment for them to elevate themselves where they want to and figure out who they are and how they want to be in the world.
Absolutely. No, yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Any last thoughts here as we wrap up?
Oh my gosh. I would say, since we had talked about rules earlier, and when we have multiple kids, and if we're single moms like we are, it's it's tough sometimes to it's mentally taxing. And
Yes, it is.
I tell parents regarding like rules, values, morals, that kind of thing, decide ahead of time what your big no bargain, no negotiation rules are.
Yeah.
Right. For your kids. And they're usually around health and safety. Like in our house, we have these rules for health and safety, right? And decide what those no bargain rules are and hold fast on those. And other things, you'll probably let them go, especially if you're having a tough day and you're just not, you don't have the mental bandwidth to like negotiate with 3 different kids. Let stuff go.
Pick your battles.
Pick your battles. Yeah. But it helps me because sometimes I have a hard time like in the moment deciding, right? Especially if I've had a tough day and I'm exhausted. It helps to like decide ahead of time what the rules are. Hey, this rule, you're asking me again, but what I think about this rule. This is the rule. And why do we have this rule? So that's a good thing to do too, is ask the kids, why do we have this rule? Yeah, we have it because X. Exactly.
Yeah. And when they have 2 households that they live in, that even becomes a better way to show up consistently, is these are the rules at our house. There may be different rules at another house, a different standard, both good, but different. Like I don't drink soda. My ex-husband and his family drink soda. So it's a treat when they go to dad's house. It's just not something at my house. No real like big reason for it. That's just a difference is all. And so And then it just gives an opportunity for dad's time to be a little more special to them in a way too. So, it can have some good things to it too, but definitely coming back to something that's central and consistent. It's so important for kids to have foundation to feel safe and feel like they can trust you and that you're supporting them because you keep showing up consistently. And they may not like the rules, especially when they want to talk back and fight back and they're a teenager too. But ultimately they come around, especially when you're like, why do we have this rule?
Exactly.
It's funny what you want to do once you follow through on the rule.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And they know what to expect too. Because kids, like, even though, like you said, teenagers, you may not think this is the case, but they do need to know what's coming next and they need consistency. And sometimes those rules and boundaries are psychologically comforting to them on some level. Like my sister and I talked about this recently, where we had examples from our adolescent and teen years, where our mom enforced some rules that at the time we may not have liked, but at the time we were also kind of glad for them because it took the pressure off of us, because we could tell our friends, well, our mom said we can't do this, so we can't do this. It was harder to tell our friends no because they're our peers, but it was easier for us to tell our friends mom won't let us, right? Yeah. So there's that dynamic too.
Yeah. I've done a few times. It's funny. My teen is actually, Mom, can I just say you said no so that it's not coming from me? And I'm like, smart. It's very strategic there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Use an excuse anytime. And call me anytime. I'll pick you up no matter where you are. Like mom will be there. So.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love showing up for my kids in that way. Thank you so much for this discussion today. I hope it serves someone out there to know, hey, you don't have to be perfect. But you can still hold yourself to a standard and you can decide what that looks like for you and for your family and for your kids and be resilient. If people want to work with you, where can they find you?
I am at lawschoolheretic.com. I blog there, and I'm on YouTube. My channel is Positive Parenting with Astrology with Maria Rieger. I bring a lot of spirituality into my parenting content. Some of my parenting content I post on there has spirituality concepts, and some don't. We're doing a live stream on reparenting, for example, this coming week. So yeah, but that's where people can find me.
Awesome. If someone hasn't heard reparenting before, just could you quickly describe that?
Yeah, so reparenting is it's a long process, but it's essentially healing from past childhood trauma, and it involves kind of like what we were talking about earlier, giving yourself everything you needed as a kid. Basically, you are kind of almost bringing yourself up, like raising yourself again psychologically. But it's thinking back to that little kid, what they needed and didn't get, and trying to give your inner child those things now. And that's a long process. It involves a lot of different modalities, everything from psychotherapy to EMDR, which I've done, to self-help books, to just detachment and thinking about things, learning to emotionally regulate, right? So all those things, honoring yourself, recognizing that you're worthy of rest and self-care. So it involves that and much more.
I just picture like my younger self and like wrapping a blanket around them and giving them a big hug.
Yeah, that's a large part of it. A large part of it's visualization too. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you again so much for being here. Thank you, listeners. And we will see you again with another episode of the Resilient Mother podcast soon.